you? Yeah, okay, all right, all right. Good, just to know you a bit, so who's composer here? Oh, wow, a lot of you. Martin's composer as well. Great. Sound designers? A lot of sound designers. A lot of you are doing both. Okay, great. Any programmer? Okay. Any student? All right. So beware, student, today. It's going to be high level, deep down, technical, geeky, but I think if you're not understanding everything, it's fine. And because that's how we learn, and that's going to be great today. And everything is recorded, by the way, so that will be soon enough on YouTube. So thank you very much for being here. It's really cool. It's been since 2019, our last Wwise tour in person, and we've done 2 online, but really, there's nothing beating an in-person event. So thanks for being here. So I'll do 15, 20 minutes on the state of Wwise, a bit of Strata, and presenting our guests. And yeah, we really want to put the focus on the guests because that's what's interesting. But we guess it's always cool just to give you an idea for where we're heading and how things are going. So typically what I'll do, in the past, what I've done is to go through, the last features of Wwise and so on. But this time around, I decided to look into, take a step back and present you something a bit more holistic, showing you where we're heading in the future, hoping it's inspiring and so on. So, are you ready for that? Yeah? All right, cool. So we'll start with Wwise. And so exactly, so what I wanted to say is those are the 5 pillars that we've been focusing a lot the last at least 5 years, and there's another good 5 years in front of us on improving those things and mostly taking difficult decisions sometime about, for example, changing the UI framework. That's a really huge endeavor, but that's what will guarantee us to still be there 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and still be kind of leading the way and helping you creating fantastic experiences. So if we look into a bit more in details, so why we're changing our UI framework. So the UI framework, what it is the technology we use to display Wwise, to display the control, the faders, the various views that we have. And back in the days, we decided to use MFC, which was a Microsoft Windows-only technology. But at the time, everybody was on Windows only, except maybe for a few studios inside EA. So it looked like a smart decision back then. Probably one of our first mistakes we've done by that choice. So now we're changing that. So we started some 4 years ago, and we still have some time ahead. So the goal is to go to, or we're already started importing stuff to GTK, which is a cross-platform framework. So soon enough, we'll run natively on Mac. So sorry if you're a Mac user and you're using Wwise. We know it's not great. I see you nodding. We're sorry. We're getting there. It's just a matter of a few years, and that will be completed. But that will also allow us to create new type of controls, enhance the look and feel, and also, which is really important, automate UI testing. So there's the sound engine that we're running hundreds of thousands of tests every night, making sure that all the new code that enters in Wwise is not, changing anything in the runtime execution. But we don't have that for the UI. So that will be a really great opportunity to provide better stability and, better product in your hand. So with 23.1, we changed the 3D viewer for a new one that is cross-platform, so that's a good step in the right direction. And the next 2 releases of Wwise, we're really porting everything to our GTK, and hopefully by 25.1 version, we're fully transitioned, and now you have a pure native Mac application running on your Mac at that time. And if time allows, we'll also add support for Git, because that's something growing. Even though a lot of people are still on Perforce and Subversion sometime, but Git is just something we need to support eventually. So on the game integration side, that's really important. So the goal is to really simplify the first-time user experience. And the first time you integrate Wwise into Unity or Unreal, or Godot, for example. So we officially support Unity and Unreal, but Godot is taking a lot of, a lot of getting more and more popular. By the way, is Alessandro Fama here by the You're there! Hello! Hi, Alessandro. So Alessandro is one of the contributors to Godot, and he's been porting the Wwise for .something integration to 5.1. So thank you very much. And he came from Germany today, so it's great to have you here. So we're not officially supporting Godot, but we have really nice folks doing it, and we've been helping a bit in there. So that's really important for us. And we want to simplify, of course, when you upgrade your versions of the game engine or Wwise, and make Wwise as transparent as possible to the native workflow and the native way of building stuff on the various game engines. So, for example, recently we changed the Wwise browser, which is really, really nicer than the Wwise picker we had before, and it shows you really quickly like what's different between your Wwise project and what it's included as your Unity asset and the sound banks and so on. We added also the filtering and search that is quite similar to the search now in Wwise, starting with 22.1. And for Unity, we have this enter play mode now that makes it much faster to go from the editor to in-game directly. So there's a series of people saying, hey, we need that because it's slow. So 23.1 is going to be much faster. So on the UX, so UX is user experience. So UX and profiler enhancement, that's really important. And this first bullet here, this is something I've been kind of challenging our programming team for the last 7, 8, 9 years about currently the workflow is still you're authoring, and then you build your bank, and then you connect to the game and you profile. And there's some stuff you can do while you're connected. You can mix your game. There's a series of properties that are there, but a lot of time you need to disconnect and change your asset and so on. And what we want is just to merge this thing. So you're authoring as you're connected to your PS5 or your Xbox Series X. That's where we want to go, including live assets transfer, including anything. You want to reroute to different buses and stuff like that. We want that live. And we're heading in that direction, reducing context switches, center focus. So by center focus, what we mean, so we started a 3-phase transformation, that's a big word, of the user experience in Wwise. The first one was to get to the object tab, and you probably noticed that with 22.1 if you're on 22.1. So we have now as many objects as you want on top available. You can pin those objects or you can recycle those. And we've put everything into the primary editor, which is your project explorer, not your project explorer, but your property editor, and then everything else is at the bottom as a secondary editor. So that reduces the need, for example, for music composer, like going to F10 to go to the interactive music layout, back to F5 for your designer, that kind of dance. So that's now all at the same place. And then for the second phase, what we want is, at the moment, when you create a new sound, imagine you drag and drop your WAV file into Wwise, it creates a sound. And currently, in the property editor, you've got 200 properties available to you. There's 10 tabs, and there's a lot of stuff, which is probably the opposite, the total opposite of what it should be. So in reality, what we want to achieve is to get to the concept of progressive disclosure. So the idea in the future is when you drag and drop your file in Wwise, it creates your object, creates your sound. But in the property editor, that will be more on the as a side panel, you're going to have a name, maybe a volume control, because that's convenient, but you don't need to see the rest. You don't need to see the 25 other features that are available on the sound if you're not using those. Because maybe your attenuation over distance is made on the random container or a switch container on top of that. So what we want is, when you look at an object, you look at the sidebar, and the components that are there are the thing that this object is doing and is special about it. The rest is just default value. So at a glance, you can jump on somebody else's project, you click on an object, and you see exactly what it's doing. So that's where we're heading with phase 2. And then phase 3 is about the center focus. And we have a series of mock-ups for that. It's not clear exactly what we will do, but what we want is to emulate what most of the software today are doing, like game engines and Maya or even Photoshop. Like you have your project explorer, you have your properties, and at the center is your model, right, or your level. That's the piece of interest is at the center of it. What it is for Wwise, what it is for sound, what do we want to show there? How can we display the behaviors and the audio in a meaningful way? So that's the question mark open. And if you have ideas, by the way, we're there to listen to you. But that's where we're heading with that. So, spatial audio, how's it going, well, people? Is it good? The pace is frantic, I'm sorry. Time is limited. We want to put our guests and get them the maximum amount of time. So I'm breezing to that. So spatial audio, that's something really important to us. We strongly believe, we're totally convinced that spatial audio is part of the future. There's no games in the future that will ignore spatial audio, at least no game that is in some sort of environment that we understand, that is not too fantasy. So we have to get there. And so the second bullet, what as an objective is, in a few years from now, what we want is, by default, you get an acoustic simulation that is 90% accurate. We don't want to pretend that we'll be 100% accurate, but something that works out of the box and does what you expect from it. And then all the controls are exposed to you to bend the reality. Because reality is boring, like real acoustic sounds crappy. We all know about that, right? If you clap your hand in a cube environment, it sounds terrible. So we don't want that. We're doing entertainment. But at least if we can start with something that makes sense, and then we bend the rules to fit the aesthetics, to fit the gameplay, to fit certain objectives. That's where we want to go. And by bring spatial audio to the masses, what we mean by that is really on the user experience side of things. Because currently, there's already a lot of games using spatial audio released out there. And it's doable, all the technology is there. But to operate that thing and to make an experience that is valid, you kind of have to have the voice pipeline in mind and be really technical. And if you want to change, for example, you have your diffraction, the phenomenon that sounds bends around objects. And as they bend, the higher frequency are attenuated a bit more. So there's a low-pass filter curve that you can address for that. But knowing where is that low-pass filter curve in your project is a bit challenging sometimes. So we need to improve on that. And the metaphor I'm using, any of you recognize this module? Yeah, some of you old enough, maybe. So that's the Lexicon 480L machine. So what was great about that, it's a reverb unit, and it's in the era where you needed a mixing board to mix, right? So you had your large mixing board, and you had this device there that, if you can look at the bottom, you've got your 6 most important faders there. The tail, duration, and the color of your reverb. What is really interesting, while the Lexicon reverb has 200 properties in it. But you don't need to access them all the time. Most of the time, you just need these 6 faders. So how can we get to something like that in Wwise, where just at a glance, you get the right thing at your hand, and when you need to do something special, okay, let's dig into the menu and find the right properties and change it. So that's the goal for spatial audio. And recently, we added a support for Apple spatial audio, same thing for Android. And there's a little asterisk there for the Android devices that support spatial audio, because all Android devices are not born equal. And recently, you might have heard about that. We announced it at GDC this year, so in March. So we concluded a 5-year agreement with Dolby, plus additional year if we want to continue. But the idea was to do a long-term commitment so that we can develop features together and make sure that we deliver object-based audio in its best form. So for Atmos, because Atmos is not over, right? They keep developing the feature set, and it's getting better and better on their end. And on our side, we released a few years ago a version of Wwise that is fully object-based audio-driven, if you want to go that route. And so helping Atmos, it's helping Wwise object-based audio, and there's kind of a virtuous circle going on there. So that's a really good win-win situation for both companies. And finally, the core behavior. So that's the sound engine. And we're working on great stuff, but it requires a lot of rewriting and re-architecturing and deleting old code. And that's our CTO's preference. Like, he doesn't want our programmer to write new codes. He wants them to delete old code and make it more efficient and so on. So we're heading in that direction. And a few features that were, actually I skipped one slide. It's just not there, but something you need to know. With 23.1, we're releasing that version this November, there's going to be an experimental feature, so something you'll need to enable somewhere in Wwise, and that will allow you to do live asset transfer. So imagine you're connected to your console or your PC or whatever, you're connected to your game, and you'll be able to drop a new WAV file on a sound in Wwise, and that sound will be automatically transferred to your game live without having to disconnect or anything. But it's experimental. There are some edge cases that doesn't work yet, but we said let's put it in as soon as possible because it's going to help you tremendously for maybe 80% of your workflow, and that will allow us to see where there's some problem and so on, and 24.1 will be the full-fledged version with that. And during 24.1 and maybe 25.1 will enable, all the properties in Wwise that are disabled when you're connected, like rerouting to a different bus, those will become enabled. And those will all become live editable throughout the next two versions of Wwise. And for 23.1, we improve on the loudness normalization. That's kind of an obscure feature in Wwise, but it's so powerful. That's something you should take some interest sometime into it. But before, it was using just the integrated signal, and it was hard-coded at -3 dBFS. Now you have the choice to go integrated or momentary max, and that's the mode you want to use for your short sounds, for sound effects, actually. Integrated works well for music, for ambience, but when you have footsteps and explosions, you use the momentary max, and that's the right feature. And on a per sound basis, you can now even change your threshold on that. And we increased the number of effects per object from 4 to 255. So we should be future-proof for this one for a couple of years at least. I see some people nodding. So that's a good improvement there. All right, so that was the part on Wwise. Everyone survived, still smiling, that's good, all right. Cool. Few words on Strata. So that's a new product that Martin mentioned that we released in October last year. So it's almost the first year anniversary soon. And it's a sound effect library that has been designed with the full design in mind. What I mean by that is, so most library, what you get actually is the rendered sound. Some libraries you purchase, you're going to have the construction kit, so some of the layers. But with Strata, the idea is we're giving you the source code of that sound, if you may. So it's really the actual project that's been used by the designer to come up with the rendered sound that is provided to you, with all the effects inserted on the tracks, but not rendered. And you have the VST effects included with that. So if there's a bit too much distortion on that layer, well, just turn it down before re-rendering your thing. Or you've got 5 layers, but because you want to put RTPC on some of it and state changes on others, you can re-render those sounds into 2 sounds, for example, and really sculpt it your way. So that was the idea with that. And something really important, we are doing that for interactive audio, and we know that you need variations. So the principle with Strata, except for ambient sound, because that's kind of a different element, but all the collection, there's at least 6 variations per sound, up to 18 variations, depending on the collection. So if you get footsteps, like that type of shoe running on that type of material, you're going to have 18 variations of that thing. So 18 of everything. So it's 10,000 sounds for the footstep collections, 10,000 sound. And the sound in Strata is a region. It's a multi-track region. That's one sound for us. So that's a lot of clips and elements in that. So it's rich, and it's gigantic, and you get all your layers. And we started that production with Boom, and in November, so what we'll do a live stream of Wwise when 23.1 will come out, and there will be a Strata portion where we will announce our 5 new partners to join Strata. So if you were at the live stream last year, I was saying that there will be new partners where they're coming, and we're excited to announce them soon. So we're already at 34 collections, and next month we're going to have 36 and 37 and 39, and we are keeping that cadence of 1 or 2 new collections per month, except for July and December. We need some vacation in there, but during that time what we do is we release free samples of what we've been releasing soon in there. And we'll also, Wwise. Are some of you using Wwise already? Yeah, okay. How is it? Good experience with it so far? All right, cool. So there's been a little improvement and so on, but what we've been also working on is to make sure that when you're subscribing to Strata, you receive a lot of content. You will add that to your Soundly, SoundMiner, Basshead, whatever sound library and software you're using. And from there, what we wanted is the ability to, you right-click on a sound. So workflow, you're searching for explosion. You get explosions from various collections, right? And you might find an explosion from Strata. If you like that explosion, you say, oh, I'd like to see what is the multi-track version of that explosion. Then you just right-click and you say, open the Reaper project associated with that. And you're going to get your cursor at the right place and ready to author the sound in its multi-track form, for example. And Basshead, I was talking with Steve last week. He's starting today his investigation, and he was telling me that it's something that he planned to add for the 24 version of Basshead, 2024, which I won't tell the date. That's probably private for him. But anyway, soon enough next year, there's going to be the 2024 version of Basshead, and we should have that available at that time. So that's for Strata. But the most important aspect is really our guest. That's where we want to put focus. So we'll have Alexander Horowitz talking about his experience on doing big AAA titles, and he's worked on various studios, on really large-scale games, so he knows a lot on that front. And then we'll have a break, a coffee break. I think it's going to be here again. And then we have the people from Respawn. So we have Nick Von Cannell, we have Alex Barnhart, forgot his last name, talking about some implementation, sound design, and so on, and Colin Grant on the music design aspect of things. So that's another large-scale project. So typically, the last 7, 8, 9 years, we tried to have an indie developers and a AAA just to have a larger representation. But this year, it kind of happened that it's 2 AAA titles. So, but it's as great. And then maybe the most important aspect is the networking portion. So there's going to be a lunch, drinks. That's going to be downstairs, just in the hall, where there's the couch and so on. And please stay with us. And if you're a shy person, or if you're a student and you don't feel that you belong because there's people with a lot of experience, please just go beyond that. It's a safe space. Anybody in game audio is really nice and approachable. 99% of them are really great people, and the 1% are just good people. So you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So please stay with us. It's going to be great.